Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswata Deve Gauravani Prachadane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastatade Shatarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So yesterday Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur explained about the beginning of Bhakti, and of course Bhakti itself is independent of everything else, but when it starts, due to different obstacles, we can be very unsteady. So that was the bhajan of Kriya, or performance of Bhakti with unsteadiness, Nishta. So by practicing of Bhakti, of course, gradually the anarthas disappear. So this is what we call anartha nivritti, or the destruction of anarthas. So anarthas are all sorts of obstacles that can appear in Bhakti due to different reasons. So Vishnu Chakravarti gives 4 types of anarthas. If we've done sinful activity in the past, that can affect us in the present time in terms of karmas and impressions, vasanas. So we get that problem. Then if we do pious activities, we will get some pious karmas in this lifetime, which can be an obstacle for us also. For instance, we get so much money, we get proud. Or we get power and position, we become proud. So these are obstacles also. These are anarthas. Or aspirations for more promotion, ambition for Svargaloka, etc. We get anarthas from offenses. This is causes a big disturbance in Bhakti. And if we don't do Bhakti properly, Bhakti itself can create anarthas as well, which we'll explain later on. So we get these 4 types of anarthas arising. So if we do sinful acts, we get a variety of the 5 kleshas which are previously mentioned. So we had avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesh. Those were the different kleshas. And if we do pious activities, we get sattva gun type of enjoyment, and we may even aspire for liberation. So these were the different kleshas which are mentioned. So we have avidya, or ignorance, asmita, identification with material body. Raga means attraction to enjoying things in the material world. Dvesha means hatred of things which obstruct our enjoyment. Abhinivesh means complete absorption in material identity and going from body to body. So based on these 5 things arising from ignorance, then we do our actions in this world, and we get karma of different types. So we can do violent, sinful activities, things which are forbidden by Scripture. And the result is we can get, in future lifetimes, we get suffering or hellish existence, a miserable body, etc. Or if we do pious activities, then we can get comfortable life, comfortable body, or we get promotion to heavenly planets. So these are the general results from the actions we do, based upon this whole idea of ignorance and raga, dvesha, etc. So these can cause an obstacle in our devotional service. The conditions themselves, due to karma, may not be favorable for bhakti. So you're born in a very tamasic place, for instance, in a tamasic family. So that's a bad karma. And you can do bhakti, but it's a little more difficult to do it there. Along with that, because of the previous sinful activity, we also develop certain types of attachments to certain types of enjoyment. And that will carry over into our present lifetime also. So therefore, even though we're trying to perform bhakti, we also have some very strong material desires, which may be sinful and therefore difficult to overcome, and it'll be an obstacle to our bhakti. So in this way, the results of our previous activities influences this lifetime, and they create obstacles for us. Now, they're not inevitable. We can always overcome them, but they do create problem for us. And therefore, we have to treat them in the proper way. So we have anarthas arising from aparads. So the main aparad which causes a bad effect is the nam aparads. Now we do have a whole presentation on nam aparads in the Harinam Chintamani. So each is explained in detail. Though it's called nam aparad, actually it relates to all sorts of things, but it's related to the name also. So for instance, we have the first one is sadhu ninda, so that's got to do with devotees. So, but the devotees are the one who preach the name, people who preach the name. So if we offend the devotees, it's also an offense against the holy name. But it's also, of course, Vaishnava aparad. We have another offense, the second one, that is to consider the names of devatas to be the same as the name of Vishnu or Krishna. So the names are there, and of course the devatas themselves. If we think devatas are equal to Krishna, that's also an offense. So that involves the identity of Supreme Lord, and he's different from devatas. So in this way, we have different types of aparads there. Some are concerning devotees, and some are concerning the process of bhakti, like thinking that chanting the holy names equal to karmakanda, as related to Krishna himself, thinking he's a devata. But they're all related to chanting the holy name also. So these become serious obstacles if we commit these aparads. They create big problems for our devotional service, and difficult for us to advance. And of course, they are an anartha, which we have to overcome. If the aparads are unconscious and not on purpose, then if we simply constantly chant, they can be removed, so it's not so difficult. Deliberately, then it is more difficult to remove the effect of those aparads. Now, a few of the aparads, he doesn't cover them all here. Very briefly, he just goes, I think, through 4 of them. So sadhu ninda is the first aparad, which is literally criticism of the devotee or animosity towards the devotee, which can take the form of thoughts, words, or actions. So it's a very serious aparad. It's called the Mad Elephant Offense by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because it creates very great disturbance to our progress in bhakti. So if we commit this aparad consciously, then our devotional service becomes very difficult to perform. So the remedy, of course, is repentance for our actions, apologies to the person, and giving respect to that person. So in Madhurya Kadambini, Vishnu Chakravarti goes into some detail about this, that we have to be very careful if we commit the aparad to remedy it in the proper way. So we have to have the feeling of regret, and then we have to go to the person and apologize. And if we avoid that, the offense gets worse. And we can't use the excuse that the Vaishnavas are calm and they don't get upset, so therefore we don't have to apologize. Again, if we say that, then we end up with more problems. If the Vaishnava does not accept the apology, we can't do much about that. All we can do is simply chant the holy name. If we chant but we don't apologize, then we get further offense. And if we don't apologize because we say the Vaishnava has real faults, then that's also further offense. So we have to be very careful when these offenses occur. So the second offense is to consider the names of the devatas to be equal to the name of Vishnu. And this involves ignorance of the Sambandha Gyan, the basic teachings. So from the very beginning, we learn through Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita that Vishnu and Krishna or Bhagavan, they are independent. They're the top. Everyone else is below. So not everybody is equal. So Shiva is below Vishnu. He is like Vishnu, and sometimes he's considered to be a form of Vishnu, but he does not manifest the same qualities as Vishnu, so we put him in a separate category, and we don't equate him. So he associates closely with Tamagun, though because he is the Supreme Lord also, he is not influenced by it, but he associates closely with Tamagun. He's in charge of the mode of ignorance. He's in charge of Ahankara. He's in charge of all the tamasic people. So, and he even looks tamasic sometimes because he sits in the graveyard and the crematorium and puts ashes all over his body. So he's not in the same category as Vishnu. Sometimes a jiva can also take that role. Brahma, of course, is generally an empowered jiva, so he's very distinct from the Supreme Lord, and we can never equate him with the Lord. But sometimes the Lord also takes the role of Brahma. So in that sense, we could equate Vishnu with Brahma if it's Brahma actually is a form of Vishnu, sometimes. But in general, we find that they are in separate categories and they're not all equal. So Vishnu is in a higher position than Shiva and Brahma. This is the fourth aparad. Disrespect, Shruti Shastra Ninda. Here, Vishnu Chakravarti takes Shruti as literally meaning the Vedas. So we shouldn't disrespect the Vedas, even though they glorify Karmakanda. So we have to give respect to the Vedas. And of course, they also give Jnana in the Upanishads. But still, we respect the Vedas. And we understand that these processes Gyan are mentioned in the Vedas for people who are not qualified for bhakti. So therefore, in that sense, permissible. So we shouldn't criticize the Shrutis or the followers of the Shrutis because they're not qualified for bhakti. And this is a proper process for them. So therefore, if we commit this aparad, what do? We have to recognize the position of the Shrutis and praise them, and praise the followers of the Shruti also, and of course chant the holy name. At the same time, realize that the position of karma, Gyan, and their followers is not the same as bhakti, it's distinct. So that was offenses, some of the offenses. The last category, the fourth category, is anarthas arising from bhakti. So when we perform bhakti, we may get material assets, position, power, followers, etc. So these can become anarthas if we get attached to those objects. And therefore we have to be very careful in performance of bhakti that these do not become an anartha for us. So we have these four types of anarthas, and we go through anartha nivritti. That's the process of bhakti, hearing, chanting, remembering, deity worship, etc. And gradually, all of these anarthas will get destroyed. The anarthas from sinful activities, the anarthas from pious activities, the anarthas from aparads, and the anarthas from imperfect bhakti. So they all get destroyed. But they get destroyed at different rates. So this is the little diagram here. We have the different stages: bhajana, kriya, nishta, ruchi, asakti, bhava, prema, and then siddha means you go to the spiritual world. So sin and piety, when we start bhajana kriya, you get a little removal, and then as we progress a little more, when we get to nishta, by the end of nishta, most of the anarthas due to papa and punya are gone. And when we get to asakti stage, no more. They're all gone. So the effects of karmas are all gone by asakti stage. If we perform that faulty bhakti, then of course we do bhajana kriya, we get a little effect, we get more effect, and at Nishta stage mostly, and by ruchi stage, all of it is gone. So they get the faulty bhakti ones get destroyed much quicker than the karma ones. The aparad ones take longer to remove than all. So we see at the beginning a little, at Nishta there's more, at bhava slightly more, prema mostly, and then when you're spiritual world, nothing. So therefore the effects of aparads can continue through all the way up to prema. So bhava, there can be a slight obstacle there. So in Nectar Devotion, Rupa Goswami says that in bhava there is a slight vigna or obstacle, and that refers to the obstacles caused by aparads. So that can disturb your bhakti in bhava stage, and therefore you can fall from the stage of bhava. If you're in prema, you cannot fall, but in bhava you can fall. So this means that the aparad are destroyed by bhakti, but much slower rate. So it continues even to bhava, whereas the sins and pieties are destroyed at asakti, and from faulty bhakti they're destroyed at ruchi. So it takes longer for the aparad effects to get destroyed. It is said that, I think it's in Bhakti Sandarbha there, that Bharat Maharaj came to bhava, then he became attracted to the deer. So he fell from the position of bhava, and he forgot to worship the Lord because he got attracted to the deer. So what was the reason for that? So it's explained it was because some aparad in a previous lifetime had an effect even in bhava to disturb his heart and make him get attracted to the deer. What is aparad is, I don't know, but somehow that it left an effect that remained even in bhava stage. And therefore he forgot the Lord because of that. So therefore the thing is the aparads, they cause a great disturbance, and they're also more difficult to remove as anarthas than the other ones. More difficult to remove. So they stick longer in the subtle body, we can say like that. So we can think of it different layers, but the ones due to aparad are the ones that stick to the jiva the most, and they're more difficult to remove. And consequently, when we perform bhakti, the bhakti has less effect because of that, because of the aparads. This is just another way of illustrating this. We have the different stages: faith, sadhu, sangha, bhajana, kriya, anartha, nivritti, nishta, ruchi, asakti, bhava, prema. And the pink section is the amount of bhakti we do. So as we go from faith up to bhava and prema, it increases, the bhakti increases more and more and more. And the anarthas, or the blue section, they, as our attraction to Krishna increases, our anarthas decrease as we go on, until by the end of asakti, all the anarthas are gone, except the gray section, which is the aparad section, which continues into the bhava stage. So in this way, the bhakti is very powerful, but the aparads stick more to the jiva, so therefore their rate of destruction is slower than for karmas or for the attachments and material attachments in bhakti. So you have these different stages from anartha, nivritti, nishta, ruchi, asakti, and bhava and prema. So these stages are visible in some people, but not all people. So it's visible. The gradual progress is visible in people who've committed the nama-aparads. So we go through these different stages. And if we don't have those aparads, then the stages can be very quick. So we see that Ajamil had no nama-aparads, so that instantaneously all his karmas were gone. He didn't even have to go through faith and bhajana kriya, anartha, nivritti, nishta, and ruchi, and asakti from the very beginning, its karmas got destroyed. That was because there was no aparadhas at all. So that's another factor in when we discuss the destruction of the anarthas. If the aparadhas are there, then the anarthas get destroyed. All the different types of aparadhas get destroyed much slower. So, what is the effect of the aparadhas? It's like a sickness. And when you're sick, you get weak. So when you commit aparadhas, the performance of bhakti or the bhajana kriya becomes also weak. It doesn't have the same effect. Consequently, we lose a taste for chanting the holy name. But then chanting the holy name is the only way we can get out of this, but we don't have a taste for it. So therefore, that's why it is so serious. We lack any enthusiasm to do any bhakti, but the only way of overcoming the aparadhas is to do more bhakti. So we get caught in this way. However, if we're a little intelligent, in spite of don't have any, do the chanting process like this, and the offenses get less and less and less, and then gradually taste manifests. Then we can perform bhakti again, and then we can progress through sadhana to prema. But it's a more difficult process because the bhakti has got so weak. So therefore, we're always advised to beware of committing the nam aparadhas. Okay, so at the end of this particular chapter, Vishnu Chakravarti explains that we should not interpret the suffering that the devotees go through as, it's not always because of the bad performance of bhakti and whatever like that. Of course, we see that some nityasiddhas go through suffering like the Pandavas, so we can't say it's karma, or they didn't do their bhakti properly, so they didn't get anartha nivritti properly. So we can't always interpret suffering as equivalent of lack of proper bhakti, etc. So sometimes we may do the bhakti, and then it looks like the suffering is not removed. And the reason is not that it's not there, the karmas are not there, but the name hides its results in some cases. It hides its glories, so that you're not aware that it's doing anything. As in the case of Ajamil. He was not aware that anything had happened, but when the Yamadutas came and then they couldn't touch him, then he realized, I don't have any karmas. But throughout the rest of his life, after he named his son Narayan, he didn't know that his karmas were gone. And he continued the same sinful activities. So that's a case of the nam, or the holy name, hiding its powers. And so sometimes it's like that. It has an effect, but we don't even realize it. So we have a semblance of sufferings or karmas. So we can't blame it on karmas, or the devotee suffering on karmas, or lack of doing bhakti properly. And it's often the Lord's arrangement, so we can't argue with that. So this is the anartha nivritti, and then through that we come to Nishta, fourth shower, Nishta. This is described in the first canto of Bhagavatam in this verse, where it talks about chanting the holy name, etc., Shravanam Kirtana, etc. And then it says here, Kriti Antastohya Bhadrani Vidunoti Satam. Krishna enters the heart and is situated in the heart, and he destroys all of the inauspicious elements, or the anarthas, in the devotees. And so when we begin the chanting process, then Krishna himself comes and he destroys all the anarthas. And then there's this verse, Nashta Praisha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavata Uttama Sloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. So Naishtiki means Nishta. So you come to the stage of Nishta. You get the Abhadrani, or the anarthas, get destroyed. Not all of them, but to a significant amount. And then you come to the steady state. It says Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu. the anarthas are almost destroyed, not all completely, but they're destroyed enough that you can perform your bhakti without too much of a disturbance. So that's the stage of Nishta. So we can recognize the stage of Nishta by the absence of 6 qualities, things that shouldn't be there. Just like at the Anishtata stage, there were 6 things that were there, like Utsahamai and Ganataralata and Niyama Kshama and Tarangarangani and all this. So if certain things are absent, then we can say you're a Nishta. So one of the absence is absence of sleep. The loya. So if we have the loya, that means we're not at the Nishta stage yet. And when we're performing our devotional service or hearing Bhagavatam or chanting, we go sleeping, then that means we're not at Nishta. And when we can avoid all of that, then that means we're doing proper bhakti. We're at Nishta stage. Another is Vikshepa. Vikshepa means like disturbance or whatever, like that. Or mentally, we're interpreting the holy name in this way, or bhakti, and whatever, all sorts of interpretations. So if our mind is always disturbed like that when we're performing bhakti and chanting the holy name, then it means not Nishta. Or at Nishta, then absence of that. And the mind's very calm, and we can fix the mind on Krishna. Aprapatti, indifference. Apratipatti, absence of indifference. So we may not be sleepy, we may not just be distracted, but even then we cannot chant. So that's because of indifference, no taste. So when we have Nishta, then that means we're very enthusiastic to chant and carry out devotional service nicely. Another one is absence of, should be kashaya, sinful habits, anger, greed, all these negative emotions, etc. These should be absent also. And if they're very prominent, I mean, it means we're not a Nishta. If we reach Nishta, and then not many of these bad characteristics will manifest. Rasa asvat. So this is not the real rasa. This is material rasa. So if we have a taste for material enjoyment, then that is not good. If we reach Nishta, then this taste for material things is much, much, much less, and doesn't affect our performance of bhakti. So these are the things which we have to look for, and if we want to advance in devotional service. If they're absent, then we can perform our bhakti very steadily, and that's called Nishta stage. So the Nishta stage is not completely pure. The anarthas are not completely gone. They may appear like that because we say anartha vritti, destruction of anarthas, then we reach Nishta. So we think all the anarthas are gone, but they're not. But they're sufficiently gone that we can at least perform the bhakti steadily, and those anarthas don't cause a big disturbance to us. So, therefore, when we perform the bhakti, because they don't disturb, the bhakti is much more effective, and therefore we can progress quite steadily here. When we have the anartha vritti stage, anarthas are more. It causes more disturbance. So therefore, the performance of bhakti is weaker also. So therefore, it's a little slow to get from that to the Nishta stage. When you get the Nishta, then it can go quite quickly because the bhakti is stronger. So anarthas are a little bit weaker, and therefore all the processes of bhakti are more effective for affecting the jiva. In terms of percentage, as I said, it's not that we have destroyed all the anarthas. So it's a little over 50% are gone. So there's a little, the bhakti is a little stronger. So therefore we can get steadiness. If it's too much maya, then of course it becomes very unsteady. So it's by performance bhakti, gradually the bhakti increases and the maya decreases. So therefore, at Nishta stage, at least the bhakti is a little bit stronger than the Maya section, and therefore we can be steady. And as we go through Nishta, it becomes stronger and stronger and stronger, and the attraction to Maya becomes weaker and weaker. Therefore, actually, Anartha Nivritti continues through Nishta, Ruchi, Asakti, and into Bhava. And the impurities get less and less and less and less as we go through Bhava stage. Like that. So the Anartha Nivritti takes place through all these stages, more and more and more and more, until we get to Bhava. There's very, very little Anartha left, only from the upper rods a little bit. Okay. There's different types of Nishta. One is the steadiness or the Nishta in Bhakti itself. We can be steady in bodily activities, or words, or mind. And of course, it may appear differently in different people. Some people can develop steadiness in the mind more easily, or some people in their physical activities, etc. Some people in the word. So it may manifest at different rates in different people. Once one gets steady in bhakti, then we can also recognize steadiness in other devotees. We develop the bhakti gets sufficiently strong that we have perception of how bhakti is affecting other people also. So this is, we can say, a good stage for the Madhyam Adhikari. So the Madhyam Adhikari has to distinguish between devotees and non-devotees, and among devotees, those who are in the lower level, like the Kanishtas, and those are in the Madhyamas, and those are in the Uttamas. So when we get to Nishta, we can actually make some good distinctions about the devotees and see who's practicing properly. So it's a very favorable stage, this Nishta stage, because the Madhyam Adhikari qualification becomes quite strong here. So we can be steady in the bhakti, or we can be steady in qualities like humility, respect, friendliness, mercy, etc. But steadiness in qualities may have developed independently of bhakti due to sattva gun, samskars, etc., and vasanas, etc. So it's not always a judge of how you're advanced in devotional service. We have to look more at the steadiness in the performance of bhakti, not in these other qualities. Yeah. So those qualities, that was subhada, development of good qualities. This happens in sadhana bhakti. So as we perform sadhana bhakti, we are worshipping Krishna, and Krishna has all wonderful qualities. So by that worship of Krishna, we also develop all wonderful qualities. But Krishna's qualities are spiritual. So therefore, the qualities that manifest in the jiva are also spiritual. The qualities that manifest from sattva guna are material, and they're lodged not in your soul, but in your subtle body only. So they're quite different. And so they arise from the gunas, sattva gun. The qualities in the devotee will arise from Krishna himself, that is Shakti. So they are very, very distinct. Okay. Any question there? Yeah.
So you're talking about how, if somebody chants with Nama Prad, it's a gradual process. Whereas when they do Nama Bhas, it's an immediate reaction. So generally the question that we get is, so is it better to do one round of quality chanting rather than doing 16 rounds of so why is the emphasis is on the quantity and not on the quality?
Well, ideally it's both. It should be both, quantity and quality. So we're assuming when you're going from 4 rounds to 16 rounds that you're not reducing your quality. Otherwise, that's not good. Of course, quantity itself is in one sense, the more you chant, then the more you become purified, but then the power of that would be less if your quality is less. So then it may work out the same.
And so when you were talking about the Nishta stage, sometimes when we do Krishna consciousness, we feel all those like, the lack of sleep, the real enthusiasm, it's there. But then again, we come back to, so is it that somebody has gone to Nishta stage and falling down, or it is just a symptom of Anishtita itself? Because there are, like for example, when we are in Mayapur or Vrindavan, there's so much enthusiasm. We want to chant. We chant 64 rounds. We do so much service, and we are pumped up. But then, when we come back to the material world, then, again, start our job, and then is it that somebody has moved a higher stage and then falls down like Bharata Maharaj, or is it that it was just Anishtita and then it was just a glimpse of, Nishta?
Well, that might not always be the case, because you're changing your situation. So one time you're working, one time you're not working. So obviously you got different amounts of time you can spend on your devotional activities there. So it's not really a fair comparison. It's like you're on holiday or something. So therefore you can do more. And when you're not on holiday, you do less. So it's not so, we can't judge it by that. So.
Maharaj, when you were talking about the aparad, the nama aparad, and then how it reduces the taste for chanting, and then the only mechanism is to chant more.
Yeah.
But again, in the process of chanting, we keep on making more and more aparads, and it seems like it's I'm only going down rather than actually ever coming up at all. So it seems like a situation where I can't even imagine to come up, because I'm not in a stage where I could even think about. The first 4 offenses, I would not be able to surpass that. So how do I even get over that? Because I'm not able to develop the taste in chanting because I've committed an aparad of those things, of the offenses. And so it seems like a never ending cycle that I'm caught up in.
Well, of course, the committing aparads is there. If we commit the aparads, then there are prescribed things, like if you do the Vaishnava aparad, they have to go and apologize to the person, or whatever like that, and continue to chant. If you commit the second aparad, of course, then you have to get knowledge, which is not difficult to get, and not commit the offense again. Third aparad, fourth aparad, let's say, is the one of Shruti Shastra Ninda. So we have to respect the scriptures. So some of these are not really, we can say, things that devotees would consciously commit. They're more like due to ignorance that may happen. Once they get the knowledge, then it's finished with, like thinking that chanting is karma kanda, like that. So once we know it, then it's not a big problem. So some of these aparads are particularly for people who come to bhakti, but they're influenced by karma. So they may worship Deva, doesn't be attached to them, or they may be in the karma kanda and think the goal is Svarga Loka or whatever like this, So that is one influence that may cause the aparad. So if we, in the beginning, we have a good philosophical foundation, then generally we're not going to commit those aparads. But then the one is the dangerous one is the Vaishnava aparad. If it's not conscious, it still has some effect. It's accidental. But if it's conscious, then of course it has a very great effect. And once that's come in, it's more difficult to get out of that one. Because you lose your enthusiasm for chanting, etc. So that's the one that's usually concentrated on, that you have to be aware of that one. So once we're in that position of losing our enthusiasm, yes, it's difficult, and therefore, once we're caught in that thing, we may not want to do devotional service anymore, and therefore it's impossible to get out of the aparad, because the whole thing is you have to keep chanting. So that's why it's considered to be such a serious aparad, that one particularly.
Sometimes in management, if you have a position, become a president or authority, when you find some area you're doing something wrong, then you're going to get in his case and say, nonsense, why you do this, and then you get heavy with him. Is that considered aparad? Or?
Yeah, so the real aparad is, one is useless criticism when there is no fault out of envy, or to unnecessarily criticize. In Harinam Chintamani, there may be a fault, but to contemn the person is one thing. You shouldn't do that, even though the fault is there. Or to criticism from previous faults, again, is wrong. So, on the other hand, it's our duty also to point out some real fault that is there in a person so they can advance in devotional service. So it is done with the right intention, and that also is not an offense. It's for the advancement of the particular person. So the real offense is when it's unreasonable or not based on any solid reason that we criticize the devotee. That's when it becomes serious. Only to harass the person, maybe.
One of the faults, I guess, was indifference to chanting, or even when you're not sleepy or late, you're indifferent to it. Is that something that someone can really be blamed for, in one sense? Like, they're chanting, but they don't have control over how much taste they get. Like, they can't manifest taste for chanting. That's up to Krishna to do that. So, can you blame the person for not having taste?
Because look at the cause. The cause would be material taste, obviously. If we have no taste for chanting, it means we have more of a material taste. So then we can say that why the more material taste, of course, you can say it was our samskars and our karma and like that. But in general, if we're doing bhakti, gradually we should reduce the taste for material things. So if it doesn't reduce, then this is where the indifference to chanting will come in. And why it won't reduce is because the 10th aparad, that we remain attached in spite of all the instructions that we should give up these attachments or whatever, like not be too attached to it. So what it means is that in spite of the knowing the goal, etc., we have no intention really of getting out of the material world. We'd rather stay here. This is very nice, Krishna is very nice, but we still want to enjoy the material world. And we don't really even theoretically want to give it up. So when we do have faith, at least we recognize, okay, it's not a good position. I'll try to give it up. But if we don't make any attempt at all, it's like the boat in the river with the anchor. We do all the activities, but it just stays there because we don't want to give up our roots in the material world.
Often the counter argument that people give to that is that I do want to give up the sinful activities or the material enjoyment, but I'm just not getting anything out of the chanting either. Like, I don't seem to get any taste from it. So what's often said is, if Krishna gives me the taste, then I'll happily let go and be on the stuff.
Well, I think that the main thing is faith itself. Faith is the qualification for bhakti. So when we develop a real, tattvika shraddha, real faith, that means that we do accept the scriptures and what the scriptures say, and the position of Krishna and the position of bhakti as a basis for everything. If we don't want to accept it, that's why we'll be attached to the material things. But when we accept that, then we lose our interest in material things. So if we don't have enough faith, that means we're too attached to the material thing, and therefore the execution of bhakti will be very weak. So we don't have that sufficient faith, then we can't really practice bhakti seriously. Of course, by time and association and mercy, then eventually that faith can develop and become stronger. But it may take another lifetime even, in some cases.
In terms of what Prabhu was asking, just a little bit of an extension on that. So, as a practicing devotee in the Grahastha Ashrama, how much material attachment can we have, or because again, being in the Grahastha Ashrama, we have to take care of the kids, we have to send them to school, we have to send them to tuition and whatnot, and all those duties are there. But then we we are also talking about being detached from material enjoyments. So
Yeah.
how do we find the balance, or how do we?
Yeah. So we do the minimum. We try to minimize. In other words, of course, that's relative also, but according to your position, then for some people, the minimum may be less, or some people more. But at least with the minimum, you can at least get your devotional service to a okay standard, acceptable standard. And if you got more material things, then of course you couldn't come up to that standard. So as long as your standard of devotional service is at a certain level, and you can continue that, fine, then you can go on with the material life or whatever, and whatever is necessary there.
Maharaj, the material world is dictate. Like, honestly speaking, the competitive world is like, I have to be the front runner, I have to be the first person to achieve anything. Or so, if we deeply see, like, there will be some asuya attached to that person is first. And so when we are performing bhakti also, like, if that competitiveness is pushing that person to do more in a good sense, or
well, yeah, we're not really competing with other devotees, but in one sense, our standard should be for ourselves, more or less. That we should just try to develop step by step for ourselves towards that goal. That's all. Not compare ourselves with other people, because they're all beginning to go at different rates. Everyone's an individual.
So will that also be will have some influence on performing activities? The Rajasi nature, which is there in the material activities.
Yeah.
Would that be also an influence for performing this? Or?
Well, if it's material rajas stimulating your bhakti, then that would be what rajasic bhakti, which is not good. So it may become materialistic bhakti eventually, and then we want to get material results, so we have to be careful of that type of stimulus for our bhakti.
I have a question. When we were young, we used to do homework and studies in the morning. But for our kids, we asked them to chant in the morning. So they chant from 30 to 40 minutes in the morning. But they hardly focus on chanting at all, though they chant. So should we need to really encourage them to chant 1 or 2 rounds quality, or we need to spend 30, 40 minutes?
This is children?
Yeah, for the children.
For the children.
Oh, well, probably they're all individuals. It would depend on them. If they find it more difficult, then you just minimize it and do whatever they can do comfortably, that's all. And if you try to force them, it probably won't work either. They'll just play around or whatever. So you just have to find out how serious they are and what, minimum they can do seriously, that's all. Should we do one more?
Maharaj, there's a question online. So the question is there any way we can quantify the increase or decrease in Nishta in Bhakti?
Quantify it.
Yeah, how can we quantify how much have increased in Nishta?
Well, you could take the absence of these different things we mentioned. Yeah. And if you can see there's more absence, then we were higher in Nishta, and there's less absence, then there's lower in Nishta, or not Nishta at all. That's all. So the fifth shower is ruchi, which means
Sorry, I don't have that.
Taste. Oops, will it fit in here? Because that's holes. Which way does it go? Up or down?
Maybe in the just take it down. It's okay.
So what is that? 4 or 5, or what is? Which one is it?
This is 5, Maharaj.
Okay. Okay.
Thanks, Maharaj.
So we have Nishta, in which the Bhakti was a little more and the Anarthas were a little less. When the Bhakti becomes a little more than that and the Anarthas are more or less, then we come to the Ruchi stage, which means not a taste for material things, but a taste for Bhakti. So it's significantly stronger, and the Anarthas are less troubling to us. So that there's no fatigue when hearing and chanting constantly, etc. In the Nishta stage, at least you didn't sleep, but now you can do constantly, and one is very enthusiastic all the time, so the taste is increased. So once one reaches Ruchi stage, then one becomes completely absorbed in the activities of Bhakti, and one wants to do those activities all the time. So naturally, attachment to material things is very, very little at that stage. So we can compare this to the sickness of the liver or jaundice. So when you get the liver gets affected, your ability to taste sweetness disappears. And then when you take sugar, it tastes the opposite. It tastes very bitter. But in order to cure the defect of the liver, you have to take the sugar. But it's like a medicine, but we don't want to take it. So this is something like our condition in the material world. Then the holy name is like the sugar. But because we're sick, it doesn't taste good. And we have no taste for it. When we do bhakti, gradually increase, and then we get cured, then we can taste the sugar. So ruchi is when we actually begin to taste the name, and it tastes nice. It's more attractive to us, and that means our sickness is gradually disappearing. So therefore, a person who's sick doesn't want to take the sugar because it's bitter, but because he has faith in the doctor. And then he takes the sugar and keeps on with the process, and gradually he gets cured, and then he begins to taste the nice sugar. So it's similar to the devotee, taking the advice of devotees and scripture, and then he continues to chant the holy name, even though it's bitter or whatever. But as he goes through an Arthanavritti and Nishta, etc., gradually the sickness disappears and he starts getting taste. So then when the real taste develops, then very quickly he can overcome the sickness completely. So ruchi is a very positive stage for the jiva. Okay, so the jiva's heart, which is contaminated by ignorance and other kleshas, becomes cured by the medicine of hearing, chanting, and other devotional processes, which in the beginning may not be so tasteful, and eventually develops a taste for the activities. So in the sixth state, we have to continue the process, and gradually we get cured and the taste appears. So what is the types of ruchi? We have one in which we like things because of the material elements, like kirtan, if it's nice tune, or the people are singing nicely, we got some nice instruments playing, then it's very nice. So that type of ruchi is based on material considerations, and that's inferior. So it's not the most, the good type of ruchi. So ruchi, which does not depend on the material elements at all, simply on the fact that it's the name of the Lord, for instance, then that is actual ruchi. So it doesn't matter who is singing or whatever, or the artistry when it's done. So this means the heart is pure, for simply attracted to the kirtan, not because of its external elements. So, what are the characteristics of ruchi? If one comes to ruchi, you have a very strong attraction and absorption in devotional processes. Consequently, attraction to material things is very little, and we will begin to regret our previous lifetimes being a waste of time. So the person becomes absorbed in hearing and chanting in association of devotees. He rejects material engagements completely, and takes refuge in the holy Dham. He likes to live in the holy places. So that is the very positive step. Above ruchi means more devotional attraction and less an artist. So very, very positive. And from this one can very quickly advance to the other stages. Okay. Okay. Any question there?
So, how much does the mercy affects this whole process of, advancement in Krishna consciousness? It looks like we need to put our effort, understanding the philosophy properly, consciously trying. We also talk about how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives prema, he gives without any qualification. Anybody can get Krishna prema. So how do we understand that part? That does it mean that we don't have to put any conscious effort at all, and just by coming in association of Mahaprabhu we get Krishna prema? Or
well, we do have the two things. We balance mercy with effort. Yeah. As in Damodar Leela. So both things are usually necessary. Of course, the rare cases are all mercy or Kripa Siddhi or whatever like that, but the normal case is the balance of the two. And the more effort you put in, the more mercy you get. Yeah? So Lord Chaitanya is all merciful. That means that he opens up the process even to the most fallen people and even to the aparadhis through his mercy and chanting of Hare Krishna. So in that sense, he's all merciful. But then that doesn't deny the fact that we do have to put the effort into it. So therefore, we have all these different things like these stages we go through, and in each stage there is necessary effort. At the same time, what's not mentioned here is throughout that whole process, as we go through, there has to be mercy from the devotees. So from faith, we go to sadhusanga, and then we start bhajana kriya, and then we go to Nata Vritti Nishta Visheshi. But still, through there should be that devotional association to help us out. And we get mercy all along the line. So mercy is always there in some form also.
So in Chaitanya Leela, when Lord Chaitanya would see someone or he would just touch someone and then they instantly be and then that person would go to someone else and then that person would get Krishna prema without any effort. Should we think that that's because they've already done something great in the past to be in that position?
Well, that's one thing. The other, of course, is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his media associates also had a lot of Shakti. So they could, that was, we would say, Kripa Siddhi in one sense, that immediately by contacting them, they could develop, prema, except like Narada Muni also does the same thing sometimes. So that can also be the case with those associates particularly.
So when we go before the deities, like Lord Chaitanya or his associates, deities of those associates, they're not different from the Lord anyway. So if anyone approaches the deity, shouldn't they get the same result?
Well, that's always there, but the personality itself, even though the deity is non-different from him, if the Lord is there personally, it's a little bit different. Because, for instance, when the Lord is there, then he kills the demon, he gets liberation. When he's not there, then he won't kill the demon, and then he doesn't get liberation like that. So similarly with the devotees, when Krishna's personally there, then this gives great bliss to the devotees and whatever. And when he's not there, then of course all we have is the deity. But because we are impure, we cannot see and appreciate that deity. If we develop the purity, then we understand who he is, and then we do get the deity does interact with us, and we get great mercy immediately. And so there's a little bit of a difference between the personal presence of the Lord and when his deity form is there because of our impurities. When he's there personally, then immediately, even if we're impure, then he can get rid of those impurities.
For the person who has a particular hobby, in yesterday's class you said that if we have some attraction to material things, we can dovetail that
Awesome,
towards Krishna consciousness, and that will help us. So each one has some hobby. Some people like writing, some people like art and craft. So
by using that in the service of the Lord, like, will that help with our bhakti?
Oh yeah, because generally people cannot just hear and chant all the time. They want a few other activities. So if we can engage other propensities in the service of the Lord, then fine. And it's a part of our devotional service. So it's just other ways of engaging, just like deity worship is a way of engaging us and doing different activities as well. So all these other things also, if we can connect them with Krishna, is very good for us.
How important is that we chant in association with the body that takes for chanting the name?
Well, obviously association could be any devotee, but the higher the association, the more beneficial it is. So if the devotees are more advanced, then we get more benefit from that. If they're less advanced, we get some of the associated benefit, but it's not so much. And so the higher they are, then the more beneficial it is.
One more question is that in management we learn first things first. So how much important is that we dedicate some of the time of our day, most probably early in the morning, to just chant the name of the Lord with concentration or with awareness, I can chant my own when I drive my car, when I go here and there, when I go shopping in the supermarket, but that chanting is not as powerful as if I dedicate, some time just to chant and hear the holy name. Dedicate it for the pleasure of the Lord, not for my purification.
Well, yeah, it's always preferable that we, when we're going to do any devotional service, we can do it with concentration and devotion. Of course, even if it's not concentrated or whatever, it still has some effect. But the better with more concentration and devotion, then the more effective it is. So it's a better use of our time. In other words, we get better effect for the same time period if we can do it properly. Okay. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.